Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on Traces of Organized Crime, a web-based analysis on sexual services advertised on the internet, and it's given by Professor Tianji Cai. My name is Tarani Chandola. I'm the director of the Methods Hub at the University of Hong Kong, and this is the fourth seminar in our seminar series that we started this year. The Methods Hub aims to be the key point of contact for social science research methods experts at the University of Hong Kong, as well as other social scientists in Hong Kong seeking further information, resources, training in research methods. Professor Cai is based at the Department of Sociology at the University of Macau. I'm very happy to announce that he's just been promoted to a full professor in recognition of the excellence and innovation of his research, teaching, and academic leadership. He received his PhD at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2010, and his research interests concentrate on new forms of data and new methods of analysis. This reflects his broad intellectual pursuits, and his research topics are very diverse, ranging from methodological, such as quantitative methods in data mining, to substantive ones, such as gene-environment interplay and adolescent health behaviors. I'm very grateful that he has agreed to present some of his research and introduce the methods to our Methods Hub seminar today. Professor Cai will speak for around 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. Please type your questions into the Zoom Q&A box as the seminar goes along, either during the Q&A or as the seminar goes along, or during the Q&A, and I'll read them out at the end of the talk. If there are any burning questions you want to ask during the talk, I will keep an eye on the Q&A box and interrupt him if that's needed. Thank you so much for doing this talk, Professor Cai. Please start whenever you are ready.
Oh, thank you very much for the nice introduction. I was told that I should say some little bit more about my journey. Why I interested in this kind of study. So I think I'm gonna start. So the topic today is about the organized crime, but based on some kind of international, well, based on some web analysis. So some of you might be very interested. Why are you interested in doing analysis on the web-based data? Well, nowadays it's very common. Somebody say, I'm interested in computational social science or sociology. Now that's what I'm doing. But for me, actually, it's not that easy. So I was trained as a demographer when I was in the program in China, and then I attended to graduate school in the U.S. So in there, my first project is statistics, methodology stuff, and then I started doing some work on some survey analysis, survey data, especially for gene and environment interaction. So when I finished my PhD, and I moved to Macau. So, and then I wanna continue my journey or my work on the gene environment interaction, but it seems like the data belongs to the U.S. government. They cut my access to the data. So I had to think something new. So my first project about computational is about we did some analysis, text analysis, mining on the synthesis document. We're still doing that. So that's my first one. And the second one, starting from text, and then we got interested about the image. So this is actually the second image project we did. The first one actually not very successful, but we learned a lot of things. So we're still trying. So the reason I'm saying that is simply because it's not like I really started from beginning, I'm interested in. This is, for me, it's just like I collect this kind of data, and then how could I do this? So that's my reason doing this kind of study. Okay, so for this topic, for many people interested in the sexual workers, and then the area or the research on sex workers usually focus on some kind of interview. Since I think about like 10 or 20 years ago, the advertisement on sexual services shift from used to be like people, you walk on the street, people pass you a card, now become international, or become the internet. There are cell phone apps. There are also the online forums to pass this kind of information. Well, taking Macau as an example. So in Macau, there are several forums, two major ones. One actually shared with Hong Kong. They pass this kind of information, and then but the knowledge or the study on this one is very laid back. So people still don't understand how and why people or what they did and what kind of information change or such and such. So the recent research in Macau not being updated for years. So you may ask why. That's the question I've been asking myself. Why the study in Macau, many studies in Macau not being updated for years? Probably because we're too small. But anyway, so since everyone hold a valid visa or permit can enter Macau, and then there is no enough resources or efficient way to monitor migrant sex workers, including their working conditions, such and such, this kind of study actually is highly needed. Well, the studying the sex trade using traditional methods rely on interviews or on volunteers, and sometimes using tracking survey, for example, the out-of-door survey or such and such. Well, there are two major problems of this kind of study. First one is the sample size usually very limited, like 20 or 30 actually considered as very big. Second one is the quality of data totally rely on how the truthfully the people responded would like to share the information. And then the last one is it's very hard to conduct in a regular basis because we doing this kind of interview costs lots of time and other resources. Well, compared to the regular study, the study on the clients also very limited because when we interview the sex workers, we may ask something, but maybe only a few. We usually cannot find the clients to go to conduct interview. And another reason is so there is a rumor in Macau. People believe that many people come to Macau as a sexual tourists. They are tourists. They are not local. But so the idea or the knowledge about the local clients is very, very limited. So how frequently the seeking sexual services and exposure to the STD, such and such information very limited. Well, let's talk a little bit about the sexual service. So in the literature, people link the sexual services or sexual worker to organize the crime. So many of the study conducted in Europe, especially British, indicate that the sexual workers usually being controlled or organized by mafia or at least some kind of organized crime behind this behind this. And so people interested in, they ask, how are those young women recruited? Are there any kind of human trafficking being involved? And how do the police have any kind of real ability to fight across this kind of organized crime? Well, now it's something about Macau. So first of all, prostitution is not illegal in Macau. Macau share very similar law in Hong Kong. See, actually Hong Kong prostitution is not illegal as long as in a private room. But soliciting customer is a crime, and also organized prostitution is also illegal. A few years ago, there's a very famous case against one of the Stanley Ho's nephew. Well, he was actually arrested and sentenced about like 7 years in prison for organized prostitution. Well, so there was a study. There was a very little study on the Macau, but there was one. They did a interview, a survey interview. They asked local people, so what they think about the sexual services in Macau. Turns out, well, they report that there was a general acceptance of the sexual tourism in Macau because most of the people, especially local, they think the sexual services or sexual workers usually not, well, local people won't usually not involve this kind of activity. Most people come over to Macau for sex tourists, they're from outside. Second one, there was also a general, well, relatively tolerance of the negative impact of sexual services. See, I don't know how many people are familiar with this picture. This picture actually was very famous. I think it's before around 2008, 2010. So there was a tunnel. In Macau connected to casinos. So people usually pass the tunnel, but there were also lots of sexual workers working stay in the terminal, the worker around, and then they talk to people and see if any can pick up any clients. Well, what's the purpose of this study? So first of all, we are not targeting or crack down the web-based sex trade, because that's against our purpose. Rather, we were thinking, say, we want to examine whether there is some better way to monitor or to evaluate local situation for the sexual services using some web-based methods. Say, identify some possible organized crime or promoting some health and safety protections for both sex workers and the local clients, and also see whether this method using web-based information is efficient. And we also want to establish the understanding of a local client in Macau based on this kind of real-time dynamic network data. Okay, how do we do it? So we targeting one local firm, which is most active one actually, for prostitution. And then the people usually post on the people or sexual worker or some kind of we consider as agents post information on the forum, roughly 30 or 40 messages or posts a day. And so some of the posts may be done by sex workers self, but others may be done by agents. So from this kind of, by analyze this kind of data, we probably can identify some behavior pattern or post part of the about agents, which we consider may be linked to organized crime. But there are some major problems doing this. First one, you have to register account to view the information. It's not about a regular web scraping. You just like doing this anonymously. You have to register with a real account. Second one, and then if you have done anything about the web scraping, and then you will know that the requesting is okay. So we want to get as much as possible, as fast as possible. But for the firm, for the server itself, they want to limit the number of the visits per second. So the rate actually being very strictly limited. And then also, when you got the information, when you script the information, part of the message randomly encrypt. So it's very hard to decipher that one. The last one, most important one, the administrator actually is active. So during this data collection, we did several rounds. It's a long story, but pretty short. So we've been fighting with the administrator for a few weeks. Turns out he or she cut all our accounts and IP addresses or everything. So we are not available to collect any more information on that one. So the web scraping was conducted by the end of the 2019. So we got information from 2013 to 2019. So we got about 13,000 posts and 49 pictures, because many of the posts have pictures. Well, now it's come to the data clean. So we got the posts. Posts have their tests, and with some kind of with also some kind of information, and as well as the pictures. So we by two parts. First one, we need to identify some information within the test. So for you, maybe think it's so easy, just read it, but actually it's not that easy, because many of the tests was put in jargons. Say how much for the service, actually in jargons. And what's the phone number? How to contact them? The contact information also in jargons. And for example, this picture actually is the one of the part of information we show you. So there is a last line. You see the password. Password actually is the contact information, usually a phone number. But you see that it's not easy to read. It's not numbers. There is some kind of characters with some certain pattern. So we find a way to decipher this one. And also we need to also identify the nickname of the sex workers by some kind of regular expression or pattern match to find them. For example, in this one, the nickname for the sex worker is Coco. So after doing this, we got a name, nickname, we got the phone number, contact information, the price or other information. The second part of analysis or the data cleaning is based on the face information. So the right panel, the lower panel, actually, well, the right panel shows the pictures. So the upper panel shows how many pictures you were able to contain. So we see that over the year 2013 to 2019, the number of pictures, the number of posts with picture is increasing. And even the overall the amount is increasing, and the number of pictures per post also is increasing. So, and then for each of the picture, we need to cut the face. So we don't use other part of body information, but we only use the face. So they will show you some of the pictures. Some there is blurred. So we did that on purpose. So we firstly need to identify the face, and then grab the information from the face. You must, how can you do it? So in the literature, in a data analysis literature using image, so there are several ways to transfer an image into data. The first one is use image as data. Say, for example, the panel here. So you see that's a picture, right? It's a picture of the cartoon character. So because each pixel or teeny tiny cell, so you can divide the entire picture into 144 by 144, some kind of number of cells, and then you can use numbers 0, 1 to indicate whether it's black or white. And then this kind of image is a big matrix, can be your data. So somebody actually did this study. For those who are familiar with the literature, there is a study using gaydar. Is gaydar. Well, the paper published 2015. Well, initiated. Well, first submission was paper 2015, but finally got published in a few years later because a lot of controversial issues. But anyway, so in that study, what they did is using the image as a data, because they web scraping a dating website, and then they know each one's sexual orientation. So it's a gay or it's homosexual or heterosexual. So using that as outcome, they're using regression related techniques to see which part of your facial features connect to your sexual orientation. So the lower part on the right panel is what they find. So the highly coded one, which means the red one indicate is more likely to be gay or be homosexual. So that's what the paper, it's a heat map showing that the degree of which or masking or which pixel correlate to the chance to be homosexual. So that's the first type of study. Second type of study, they use so-called facial landmarks. So by identifying the face, they're using some kind of, and then what they call a registration or such and such. They identify the coordinates of your facial landmarks. So for example, where's your eye is, the center of the eye and the shape of face, such and such. There used to be like 83 landmarks, now it's 140 something, even 200 something. So once you get the landmarks, and then you need to transfer or register. So for example, if you want to compare two faces of the same face, you need to standardize them. That's so-called this is traditional analysis. That's the way. So scaling, translation, scaling, and then rotation, and then you got the landmarks. Well, but that's not what we did. So what we did, we use some kind of facial recognition. So why? Because we want to do something called a facial clustering. I will tell you that later. Let me finish the methods first. So instead of using traditional method, using data, using image as a data, or analyze your landmarks. So what we want to do is we want to say which pictures belong to the same person. So that's the question. So we upload the pictures to a to AI, some kind of a Baidu AI cloud, and then using some kind of platform there to identify, to do the facial clustering, and then tell us which pictures belong to the same person. Say we upload about 49,000 pictures. Turns out 44 faces identified, and then the AI cloud uses some algorithm, and then to identify to show us the most similar 50 faces. 50 faces, and then they connect them together. but that's not all. That's not all. Well, then because we know there are some kind of faces, but they might not be the same person because there is some threshold. So Baidu AI Cloud only give you 50 most similar ones, but we don't know whether it's in person. So we need to do some kind of data clean again. So first of all, we remove those low quality faces using some kind of threshold. Say whether it's a face, whether the face is complete, whether it's blur. We want to clean ones and such and such. So that's part of a code we did the clean. And then we want to identify the same person. So usually, if you heard about something, well, if you know the literature about the machine learning or such and such, you always heard machine learning is more like a super cool tools. You just throw your thing there, they give you something fancy, but actually it's not that. Usually, if you want to do something, say identify some pattern, you need to have some so-called label data set, which is a test, as a training data set, training data set. So for example, you know something is true, you're going to train your algorithm or train your method to say, okay, you need to identify the pattern and then apply to the test data set. So, but for the faces, we don't know which one they're same person. So we don't have this kind of training data. Well, the data set, what are we going to do? Label the data set, what are we going to do? So by observation, so the faces within same post must be the same person based on this assumption. So, and then we started training our algorithm, and then we need to find the threshold to cut. Say, by this threshold, within this 50, so there are some faces higher than the threshold, some faces lower than the threshold. We find the threshold which can maximize the percentage of correctness, and then we consider that's the cutoff point. So we apply to the rest of the face clusters. We consider identify this cluster, they're true, they're same person. But then, sure, we have some kind of a mistake. So by some kind of testing or such and such, we found that if you cut the threshold as 84, and then we have the recall rate, which roughly is number of correctly identified over the number of, we know the cases is 80%, which is a high risk. So we consider that one. So after that, we identify identify roughly 6,000 clusters, face clusters. And then, so, well, this is 7,000 because there are other information missing. Turns out we have roughly 6,000 facial clusters. So that's what we did. But you may ask, why you want to do this? Why you want to do a facial cluster? Why do you want to conduct analysis using faces data or faces landmarks? So first of all, so if you want to identify a migrant sex worker, so for example, how often she visits Macau. So what do you want to do? So you say, okay, well, let's check this person's nickname. Since they didn't provide a real name, give a nickname, but a same person can have multiple nicknames, or multiple person can share the same nicknames. So that's some kind of inconsistency. Second one, yeah, maybe you can use the phone number because you identify the phone number. First of all, one person can have multiple phone numbers. Again, and if they're being controlled by the same group of people or organized crime, and then maybe somebody give them phone as a working tool. So which means multiple sex workers share the same phone number. Again, there's not consistent. How about the user ID? If somebody they post the same something by themselves, and then the user ID may be one. Again, one person can have a multiple user ID. Oh, this person being controlled by a group, the same agent can post multiple sexual workers. Turns out they're also not consistent. So by using these facial landmarks or using facial clustering, at the least, we can remove some of this kind of inconsistency. And we're going to show you the results later. So say, try to reduce this kind of measurement error inconsistency using only using nickname or phone number or user ID. That's the reason we want to do the facial clustering. So here's some kind of results I want to show you. First of all, the top right panel shows how many by using the cluster. So how many times a face cluster can show. So roughly 79% cluster only showed once during the study period from 2016 to 2019. Well, but there are several ones that show multiple times. 11% twice. There are 4%, 4% 3 times, so on and so forth. About like 3+ time is about 5.6%. So the bottom two charts shows how the phone number and facial cluster overlapped. So the right panel, the chart actually is the largest group, So how they connected? So the blue dot is a phone number. The right dot is a facial cluster. You can see there are many facial clusters shared same phone number that also one same facial cluster have a multiple phone numbers. So by doing this facial clustering, we can at least show you the inconsistency between the phone number and so one person can have multiple phone numbers. The left panel is reorganized some chart with the same information as the right one. We see more, information more clear. So for example, there's one phone number be shared about like 10 facial clusters. So maybe this is a sign of organized crime because multiple people come over, sex will come over, being given the same phone number, a shared phone number. So this is the second part. We want to show there is some inconsistency between the names using the facial cluster. See, we know that same person can have multiple names, and different person can have same name. So we have 6,000 facial cluster with nicknames, with nicknames, and there are 600 cluster with more than one nicknames. So which means one cluster, multiple nicknames. But since the nickname was down, also identified by machine, that may also contain some kind of errors, mistakes. So there could be machine error because machine can mistakenly pick some kind of words, or by typo because somebody make the post and then they type in the wrong word, or the different spelling by the similar name, by the similar pronunciation, or the similar graphics. So let's take a look of this. See the top one. So we see the cluster 1197. See, we have 1, 2, 3 names associated with the cluster. See, the second and third one, there probably is machine error because when machine identify names, Wang actually is a very common Chinese last name. So machine was, but the Wang can maybe means king. For example, there is a very common term in the post. It's called a service king, which means provided best service. So when machine pick up Wang and then we consider as a last name. So if you only use machine identified nickname, so Wang Zihan and Zihan probably 2 people. But by doing this facial clustering, we can identify those 2 maybe the same person. Similar as the second one, facial cluster 3716 and Le. See, 女, which means the girl. See, the 女 also can be some kind of a female, and then but being picked up by machine. The second possible typo. So look at the cluster 5180. See, this is just 2 ways to spell the same thing. So the second one, yang, which means sheep or goat, which probably a typo because somebody typed in the wrong word, because that's not the common nickname for person. Similarly, a third one, 5383. So these 2 probably due to typo. And then the last category is probably due to different way of the spelling. So together the cluster 233. So Maggie Q, Magic, and Magic Q. They're probably the same person because different is with the spelling. And similarly, we can see the number 2996. See CC, they're probably the same person because CC may be just like an abbreviation of the CC. And so we can see the last one also very well. The second and last one also very interesting. 4810. See, they're actually the first 2 maybe just same same form, but the last two, well, the last one and the first one, they share the same pronunciation. So by using facial cluster, we can reduce the memory error if you only use the nickname. So that's what we did. So now come to the other things. So people argue, or local people in general believe that the sexual workers come to Macau, or migrant sex workers come to Macau, and then they only mostly serve tourists. But from this analysis, we're going to show you this group of people, they probably only serve for locals. Why? Because the price was very, very low. So based on some kind of ethnography study, the regular price for sexual service for tourists, especially those in the big casinos, roughly 3,000. But the price we identified, roughly 400. And the price is very stable, very stable. Because Macau, because in Macau, see, if the sex service provided in the private room is okay. But based on the information, we find that actually the larger amount of the service actually provided in the hotel. So here comes the question, whether the authority noticed about this, or whether the hotel manager noticed about this. Is this the way to attract the business, or just like you don't tell, I don't ask, kind of thing? So we see that actually the hotel room actually is starting from 2015, there's very little hotel room, and then 17, 18, 19, the number of hotel rooms actually increase. So this is the by amount, but the non-hotel room didn't change very much. And then, since we want to identify some possible traces of organized crime, so what are we going to do? We'll say maybe some kind of in terms of time, the time of posts. Say if some people are professional, they probably post in a regular basis. While someone is post by self, because you cannot just like, okay, I post, but at the same time I'm working, provided services. So that's not possible. So we identify the hour. We identify the hour of the post. Turns out, and by the number of the girls, this ID post, turns out there's no clear differences, no very clear differences, except the 50 number. If the ID post 50 more than 50 clusters, official clusters, such and such. So in general, the peak hours starting from after 11 or 12, and then number of posts increases. And then peak hour usually show like 15 to 18-ish, and then decline. Well, if we pick up the nickname or face cluster by user ID, we find that roughly 30% of a user ID only post one official cluster or nickname, only one. But 22% of them post more than 10. So from this one, we consider that might be professional agent doing this. So we recorded the number of nicknames or official cluster posted by each ID into categories. We're gonna include it in the later analysis. Similarly, we cut the hour pattern into several different stages. Again, we're gonna include in the later analysis. So from 2 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 17, and 20 to 1 a.m. And then based on face clusters, we can see how people visit, the frequency of the visit. So we estimate, we don't say we observe that, we estimate because we estimate from the face clusters. Well, it turns out the number of occurrence, there about roughly 80% face cluster only showed once, But there are several frequently showed up once, say two about 10%, but there were about 4% showed up 6+ times. And you may ask, how do you know? Have you ever verified whether the facial cluster is real? So the largest number in our analysis, we found that the frequency in terms of occurrence was 48. So which means this face cluster showed 48 times in all these posts. We thought that's not possible. So we checked. Turns out there's a twin. So from the information they provided, there are two names associated with that. They're twin sisters. So, but we delayed that one. So because we know that's the twin from the other information. So which means our official clustering maybe in terms of accuracy rate is very good. Maybe it's very good. So now we're going to focus to analyze this kind of number of occurrence into an ordinary regression kind of fashion, because we have one time, 2 times, so on and so forth. So we did this. So we're going to model in the number of occurrence by an ordered logic model. We did that by the regular one, also by the random effect one, because the cluster of the ID, because post ID. So from the analysis, we show that if this post indicate that the service is provided in hotel room, and more likely and the higher chance this official ID would show up again, higher chance. If this post with unique phone, which means this phone never been shared again, only showed once, and then this cluster, official cluster, would more likely show up again. And also, if the post made by user IDs with a lower number of official clusters, and then this occurrence would increase. Similarly, well, not similarly, I would say if the post was being made morning, and then this official cluster is more likely to show up again. So that's some kind of results we got. And the second one, so we were thinking, so what else we can find? What else we can find? Since we identified the visits, so, and then when the official cluster, when the cluster show up, and then when these show up again, so we calculate the number of the interval, or the intervals between the two occurrence. So that's the plot, the bottom. So we see that, so you have to show up twice, at least twice, and when we'll be including the analysis. So that's the reason number of n is only 1,000 something. So when we plot that, we found there were several interesting peaks. See the circled one, which is 7, and then next circled one is 14, and then you will see there are also some kind of a patterns there. So every few values, there is some up, down, and then we find that this kind of a peak is usually 07, the multiplication of some kind of 7. So 7, 14, 21, so on and so forth. And then we were thinking, why? And then we found that since many of the sexual workers come over here, they're under tourist visa, or they take advantage of the Macau's some kind of a policy. If you have a airline ticket, you have a flight ticket to go off from the airport Macau, you can get in to Macau without the Chinese visa. Without Chinese visa, you can use your passport, but the maximum day allowed is 7. So 7 days later, you need to get out Macau and come back again. So usually they didn't say how many times you can take advantage of this kind of policy, but usually is at least twice or something is safe. So that's part of the reason why there's a 7. There's always a peak about the 7, 14, 21. So the right panel, the table shows the percentage of the 7. Say 7%, but the percentage of 6 or 8 is much lower. Similarly, happened to 14. Percentage of 14, but the percentage of 13 and 15 is much lower. Well, for 21, actually is not very obvious, but still much higher. We also conducted independent analysis to identify the peaks using non-parametric methods. Turns out the top 4 peaks is 7, 14, 16, and 21. So 3 of them relate to 7. So, and then we're gonna do some kind of 7-day peak seasonality analysis. So what we did? We did something called, first of all, we modeled the number of days as a Poisson distribution. But we know that 7, 8, or 14, such and such, there's a peak. So we use so-called inflated Poisson, which means besides this, for example, there is a occurrence of the value 7 in the distribution, but we assume this distribution, well, the frequency of 7 comes from 2 distributions or 2 mechanisms. First one is Poisson. So this 7 belongs to Poisson 7, or another 7 belongs to logistic, say weather is 7. So we have 2 parts of analysis. The first one is regular person, which means shown in a blue color in the table. The second part showing a little bit of green color is the inflation. So whether the value gonna be at exactly 7 or the 14 or 8 such and such. So we find that first of all, if the sex worker, they post the information about the hotel room, and then the intervals slightly longer. And if they use unique phones, the intervals also slightly longer. And if the post be made in the morning time or the evening time, actually, well, the morning and night time, and then the intervals slightly longer. And the last one is, say, if the post was being made at night, this the value of the interval more likely to be 7, 14, or 21. So they more likely to follow this kind of seasonality kind of pattern. Okay, a bit of a discussion. Are there any traces of organized crime? So when we started this project, we thought organized crime may be a good starting point, but so far analysis might not give exactly what we wanted. So why? Because we cannot see much so distinct pattern of what so-called professional agents. So far, the information in terms of the post hour and the number of the clusters showed or number of nicknames showed, we didn't see much distinct pattern for these kind of agencies in terms of post time, number of posts or nickname or face cluster or such and such. But there's some major observations. So if a person with a shared phone, and then less likely, the sex worker will show up in higher occurrence. And also the intervals would be lower. And if this person or the sex worker stay in the hotel room, the chance actually go up higher and the intervals also be higher. Well, the morning post, they increase the chance of a higher occurrence, and the morning and night post increased the intervals between. And again, the night post increased the chance for the interval at exactly 7, 14, and 21 days. So we still have some work to keep going. Since we found that there's a network with shared phone. So we conduct a further analysis, which is a dynamic network. It's an ego-centered. Well, it's an ego-centered. It's a centric network. It's not a complete observation. We find that the shared phone. So if we connect two sexual workers, whether they share the phone, if we see share the phone make the connection as a social network, there is three big clusters, several clusters within the data set. There's one big cluster, which is shown on the left panel. We see there are many of sexual workers or facial sexual worker nicknames, or even use the facial clusters being connected together. Well, if we also go deep a little bit further on the response, because each post may be responded by other IDs. Some people say, yeah, well, I went to the service, it's great, or such and such. And then we found that there is most of the IDs connected in a big circle, but roughly there are 350 IDs only post, never response to the others, So that's the next step. We want to go a little bit further. We want to analyze the shared phone network. We also want to analyze the response network. So some limitations. First one. Well, we know that using this kind of a web-based information, data, we actually only have very shallow information. We didn't know exactly what the person come from or other kind of demographic characteristics or such and such. So we wanted to conduct a possible phone survey. Since we have the phone numbers, we have roughly about like 2,000, I think it's 2,000 phone numbers. Well, now it's expired, but so we applied funding twice, been declined. I don't know why. Maybe it's too sensitive. So now it's not possible to use the phones again, because the government issued a new regulation since beginning of the 2020. So if you want to use the phone, you have to show your ID. So the ID has been linked to the phone. Used to be phone in Macau is just like it's like paid phone. You can buy as many as you want, as just by 1 month or a few days. But now it's not possible. So which means many of the phone numbers in our database might be expired. We cannot contact these people anymore. But we still can doing that by collecting more information. Second one, there's some machine error in our analysis. First one is about the facial clustering. We may identify the wrong same person be split into different clusters, or for example, the threshold we pick out 84 might be not reasonable or such and such. And again, the name identification also may be subject to the machine error. Say we identify names wrong or such and such. So we need to conduct some more sensitivity analysis and a robustness check in terms of our facial clustering and a name identification. And the third one is about the random encrypt text. So not all the posts we have phone number. Roughly about a few percent of posts we cannot find a phone number because the part of the phone number, the code being encrypted, we couldn't. It become black, so we have to delay that. So the last one we actually had some ethical concerns. Well, used to be have ethical concerns, but now I think we are much more clear about this. So when we want to start this kind of analysis, so we have very ambitious plan. So besides the web-based analysis, data analysis, we want to go contact with these sex workers because we have the phone number. And then, but that may be some ethical concern. That's probably the reason why we didn't get the funding. But anyway, so now the ethical concern is just down. Since we didn't use any of the face, the image, we use cluster, which just only ID. We don't even keep the what they call the facial landmarks. So I think we are okay. We can maybe just like get away of the ethical concerns. So anyway, so now if you have questions or whatever things, suggestions for further the path possible direction we want to go, yeah, please should. Thanks. I think that's all.
Thank you so much, Professor Kai. That was a really wonderful talk in great detail about the methods and data as well as the inferences that you're drawing from the very innovative data that you collected. So we have got some time for questions. So if people would like to write in their questions in the Q&A box, please go ahead. To start off, please could I ask Professor Kai if you can give me some thoughts about the amount of time that we spent in not just scraping the data, but also it seems like there's a lot of data cleaning involved. And
yeah, we spent a lot of effort on data cleaning. So we finished data collection about in 2019, end of 2019, December. And we want to do analysis. We did something in 2020 and did something in 2021. We keep thinking. So what I showed here is just like something I analyzed it down. I thought was maybe useful. I did other things. For example, we have posts IDs. We also have the facial cluster within each ID. So we thought that's a big matrix. We can do some kind of the clustering on the IDs. Maybe can find a pattern of the IDs. Turns out that's not feasible. We tried about a month. Turns out no, nothing. We're still working on some text mining, but unfortunately, because you may see part of most of the test, but was put in spoken language in Cantonese. Many of the packages available doing the text mining in Chinese, they're based on Mandarin or written language, but for spoken language, especially Cantonese, not available. We're still working on that part. So and we also think about the stories behind. So we spent so far about a few months on the data. We're still digging. Yeah, for better story.
Great, thank you. There's some questions coming in now. If you can stop sharing your screen, Professor
Okay.
Kai, maybe that would be great. So the first question is, thank you for a talk. What do you think are some incentives for subjects to do a phone survey, considering that this is very sensitive data?
Incentives, I don't know what you mean incentives. So since we have the phone number, which usually not available for the people doing this kind of regular interview, social workers such as, we have roughly 2,000 phone numbers. So I thought it's a big asset. So we want to do, that's the only reason. Probably because, yeah, because the concerns, we didn't get a funding, so we didn't do it. We couldn't make it. But anyway, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I can imagine. Yeah, as you point out, it's the ethical concerns about contacting people.
Contacting went down. We were actually thinking in the proposal. We were thinking to pay them.
I see. Yeah, but yeah, I can imagine the ethics board review would be quite.
Again, it's the ethical concerns from the agencies. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So the next question is about whether a sex worker can be associated with more than one agent, or whether she works by herself.
Yes, definitely. So so we found that the one of the network charts we show, actually we did that by the nickname, phone number, nickname. There are actually the multiple sex workers associated with the different agencies. That's one way. Well, we want to dig further and then see how to identify this, find some partners such and such. And again, this is a dynamic. The network is dynamic. So it's not just like I just show you one network chart, but actually it's being built by time. We know the timestamp, so we actually can draw a more comprehensive ones.
Great, thank you. The next one, thank you for your presentation, which was very interesting. There are two questions. So are there any publications about this research?
Okay, so far we are still working on the draft. So you see how we spend a lot of time on effort and thinking. So which variable we can use, a dependent variable or the partner we can find. We still try to find a. I'm not so far. I'm not satisfied by the results. We're still thinking. Yes, but if there will, well, I think it definitely will be because this is part of my students. Oh, yeah, I forgot to introduce the second author. Actually, this is his part of the thesis.
Great.
What's the implication? Yeah, well, be honest with you. Implication, we're thinking so many. First one, we want to do, we actually try to build a database for the facial landmarks of sex workers, which is highly controversial, again, being denied by the funding agencies. The second one implication I would consider is, see, because the 7-day visa thing is for tourists, so sexual workers take advantage of it. That's the abuse. Because, well, if you consider sex service also some kind of labor, and then they're abused the labor law. So by provide this kind of evidence, I think we can provide some kind of a policy indication. Maybe there's something should be done in terms of the visa policy, or better way to check, better measure to do this. Well, which is definitely not the best policy implication, but at least we can provide some kind of a social worker or the health agencies about this kind of issue. So you need to check this.
Great. The next question is, what were the encrypted parts of the posts, and were you able to decrypt them?
Usually the encrypted part is part of the phone number. So one character is missing. So we lost about like a few % of phone numbers. That's the reason.
Okay. It's a question from Dodo, who very kindly introduced you to me. Thank you for sharing your
research. Yes, we were trying to do that because many of the replies done by clients, you can tell. But since all the texts in Cantonese spoken language, the package or the computational tools for Cantonese language not many. So we're still trying to find a better way instead of by checking manually. It's a lot of work. So we want to do something better. Yes. We're still working on that part for the client's information.
Great. There's a question: how often is it? Is it for a post to reuse a photo? That is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we did the check. It's kind of very interesting. I think most of pictures are actually authentic from the real sexual worker, because you can read the reuse. We don't find many reuse ones. We don't find, because if the sex worker come over again, they want to attract the more customers, they won't reuse the photo. Or they even do better, manipulate the photo to make the slightly different.
Okay. I had a question about the Baidu AI algorithm that was used for the facial clustering. So in other sort of facial AI algorithms, there's been talk about some biases, especially with some AI image.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe by the skin color thing, right?
Skin color, ethnicity being a problem for some. Yeah.
So that's one of the concerns. That's the reason we picked up the Baidu.
I think, yeah, because most of the
there are several available. The Google one, the Facebook one. There's another one, Amazon one. There are three most popular ones in the international community, but we choose to use Baidu one. Plus, Baidu offers some free services, so we don't have funding, so we have to do everything as cheap as possible.
Sure. Yeah. There's a question about the ratio of female to male sex workers.
Oh, we don't find any male sex workers.
Oh, okay.
We didn't find in the pictures. We didn't.
I mean, maybe it's the forum. So I had a question about, you looked at one particular forum and you said the most popular, but could there be other forums and other ways in which
yes,
people
definitely. Yeah. So okay, let's put it this way. So homosexual or the sexual services for homosexual people. So given the small size of Macau, I don't think there are many available, at least to post online. They probably use some other apps, different ways, the Snapchat, or use kind of, Instagram, this kind of platform, not by the popular one. So the one that actually the most of the sex workers, well, I would say all of them, 99% of them, the migrant sex workers, and the female. And from the partner, we would argue, and most of them maybe from mainland China.
Great, thank you. I think we're coming on to 12 o'clock now. I think there are no more questions. So I just would like to thank Professor Kai once again for a really wonderful talk. I really hope you get this published. I think you've
we have to.
you presented a huge amount of data that you've collected, cleaned, and really some very interesting inferences and lots of interesting statistical analysis that you've done with that. So really, thank you so much for sharing this with us today for the Methods Hub seminar. Great. So thank you, and thank you everyone for joining in today. And we'll see you at our next seminar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kai. Bye. Bye-bye.